Hello. Welcome. My name is Kevin Owasu Itoe, and welcome to Teach Yourself Test Automation. We are teaching ourselves another automation tool, which is Cypress, which you use to automate web applications, right? And it's very interesting so far. So today we are going to be doing we're going to be using various locator strategies to find an element on a web page, right? We're going to talk through various locator strategies to find an element on the web page, right? So, yeah, and that's the basics of this video, right? So, I have looked hard for a practice website, and I've come up with this e-commerce website, right? So all we're going to do is we're going to locate this search field, right? Search field, and then we're going to type in some text, right? And the text we're going to type in is, let's just be original, right? And type in my name, right? That's all we're going to do. And I'm going to show you how to identify this or to find this text field using the 4 locator strategies that we're going to talk through, okay? So we know Cypress only supports CSS selector, right? CSS selector. So the locators we're going to use, so the attributes we're going to use is ID, class. So you're going to have to customize your ID into a CSS selector, right? And you customize your class into a CSS selector. And also we're going to customize, we're going to use the attribute, some of the other attributes or for that web element, right? So for that search box, and customize a CSS selector for that, right? And we're going to also use the tag name strategy, right? Tag name locator strategy, and customize that also for this search box, right? So I'll just show you some notes I made so that makes a bit of sense, right? So so these are the 4 locator strategies we're going to use. We're going to use ID name, we're going to use class name, we're going to use some of the other attributes of that search box field, and we're going to use tag name, right? So all we're going to do is locate this search field and type in this text, and we're going to do that for the 4 main locator strategies for Cypress, right? And these are the 4 main ones, right? That's all we're going to talk through and on this one, right? And hopefully, as I learn and teach myself, I'll come across much more strategies I can use. But for now, these 4 are what I use for writing customized CSS selectors in Cypress, right? So you say customized CSS selectors because you're customizing the attributes. Each and every one of these attributes, you're customizing them into a CSS selector. So you're customizing ID into a CSS selector. How do you customize ID into a CSS selector? All you do is a hashtag in front of the ID name. And you also customize your class name into a CSS selector by just putting a dot in front of the class name, right? And the attribute is slightly different because you put them in brackets, and then the attribute equals so those are the square brackets. Attribute equals the value, and also for the tag is just a tag and hashtag ID and the tag dot. So the tag hashtag, so tag hash ID name, hashtag ID name, and then tag dot class name, and then this one is termed as a customized CSS selector, right? So it's tag name in square brackets, attribute equals value, right? So we're going to see all that just now, right? So let's start with ID, right? So if we inspect this element, so this search field, and here we'll go ID here. So if we copy the ID, we'll keep that handy, right? Copy that handy. So keep that handy. Go to our Visual Studio Code, So all I've done here so far is just visited the website we are going to be using, right? It's e-commerce website. So all I've done is cy.visit, and then I'm visiting the website, right? So the next line we're going to write is cy.get, right? Get, and then you open and close your brackets, and also your quotations, right? And in here, all you do is you drop your ID. And to convert that ID into a CSS selector, you just put a hash tag in front of it, right? And next you say dot type, right? And what do we want to type? We just want to type. So again, into brackets, we just want to type my name, right? So sorry, I had, yeah. So we want to type my name. In here, we just say Kevin Owasu Itoe, right? Sorry, I should have said, right, at the start, or some of the videos I've done, we have my first test case, and then I've got a second test case here. So we know we are using the Mocha. Cypress uses the Mocha framework, right? The Mocha framework, and you will know this from the videos I've done already, right? The Mocha framework. So what happens here is you've got to describe. The describe now is your suite that holds in your test cases, right? So the function for the describe is your test suite, right? And it holds all your test cases, right? So in here we've got my first test case, and then we've got my second test case. And then we've got the it function, and the it function, again, it is nestled within the described function, and the it function holds individual test cases, right? So inside here we've got two it functions, which means we've got two test cases, right? So before I'd already right, okay, yes, I'd already I'd already opened my Cypress, right? So my test runner, I've already opened my test runner, so we don't have to waste too much time with this, right? And also the browser is also being executed before, right? So we don't have to waste much time. So if we just go in here and save this, hopefully we could see it run. Oopsie, right? Hopefully we can see it run straight away here, right? So what we are aiming for is we'll go to the website and we identify with my ID CSS selector and enter my name, right? Hopefully it works. So here we'll go to the website and we've entered my name, right? You see it up there? That's it. So it's entered my name, right? So let's look at the log, the command log. So the website, we visited the website and we went into that search field and we entered the CSS selector, customized ID CSS selector, and then we typed in my name, right? And if you see, before it was a search and after, so the DOM has captured the screenshots right there, right? So the before and after screenshots. So you can see before it was empty, we just search text in it, and then after it's my name in it, right? And then this just returns that 200, all good, right? So that was ID customized into CSS selector, right? Now let's see how we can handle the next one is class name, right? Class name. So class name is just dot class name, right? So if we go and inspect, already inspecting the element, or sort of already inspecting the search field, yeah, element on a text on a search web page. So we go for the class. So class name. So we copy this, and so all we have to do is put a full stop in front of the class name, right? And we know that if there are any spaces within the class name, all we have to do is close that space and put another full stop or point in front of it, right? So close that and put another point, right? And all we have to do now, we've customized our class name into a CSS selector, and all we have to do is copy that, and we go to our Visual Studio Code and hopefully just substitute our customized ID with our customized class name for our CSS selector. And once we save, that should run that test case again, and hopefully the same thing should happen. That text field should be identified and my name should be typed into that text field, right? So the first test case, in previous videos you probably would have seen the first test case where we visited my website, right? Again, we've gone to the website, again my name has been typed in, right? So we've seen class name, ID first, customized into a CSS selector. Now we've seen class name customized into a CSS selector, right? Now the third one is using any of the attributes to customize them into a CSS selector, right? Any of the attributes. So if we go back to our application under test, let's say we visit. So let's use one of the attributes. We use name, right? So let's use name. So we copy this, and go back to our notepad. And all we want to do here is within the square brackets, we don't want to use braces, within the square brackets, so the attribute is name is equals to, and we just put what the attribute is, right? So the attribute is name, and then we put in the value is equals to the value, which is search query. And all we want to do is copy this, right? Copy this and take it into our Visual Studio Code, substitute the CSS selector for class name with the CSS selector for the name attributes, right? And hopefully if we run this, or we save this should run and also do the same thing, right? So identify the search field and enter my name into the search box, right? That's a search. Right, again, that's done it, right? So we have seen how to use any of the other attributes, right? Any of the other attributes. We could swap around. Let's see if any of the other attributes are unique enough. Placeholder is equals search ID type. Maybe that type is not. Yeah. So we just use the name for now, right? You get the point, right? You get the point. So the third one is you could use a tag, the tag name in front of any of the other CSS selector strategies. Let's say you wanted to use ID and ID wasn't unique enough, right? ID wasn't unique enough. Then you could put a tag name in front of your CSS selector customized ID, right? So if we want to use, let's say we want to use this one, right? So it's going to be the tag name and hashtag ID name, right? So if we go back to our application under test and we go to our HTML elements for that, right? So if we go back to ID, yep, we'll get the ID here, and all we have to do, we know the tag name is input, right? If I can spell input, hashtag search underscore query underscore top, right? So if we copy this, so this is our tag name. You can use this when your ID is not unique, right? You don't have a unique ID, right? So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code and substitute this for our tag name ID, right? And save this, right? Save this. Hopefully you're following along what I'm doing, right? And let's go here and see if this achieves the same goal, which is just to visit the website, identify that search field, and enter my name using the tag name and ID, hashtag ID, right? Exactly, and it's done the same, right? So every time we could be visiting the same we could visit the code on the code here, right? And again, we've just visited the URL or the website. We've identified, we've input hashtag ID name, and we've entered or typed in my name, right? So if we hover over here, we can see, I don't know why it's not giving a before and after. You should be having a before and after. All you have to do it down here, before, after, before. So that's after. So this is how it was before, and then after, my name has been keyed in, right? So that's quite cool. So that's a DOM taking the snapshots of every action that's been carried out on the application under test, right? So if we go back, next one to do is, you get the point, right? So the next one we want to do now is a tag, or a tag name and a class name, right? So if we go tag name, what was our tag name? Go back to our application under test, inspect the code, not tag name, sorry, class name. So class, yes, our class was this, right? And we know our class had far too many spaces, right? So we want to take out the spaces and put in dots instead, or points, or whatever you want to call it. And in front of here, we want to say input, right? So that's our tag name plus our class name CSS selector, right? Copy that, substitute that into our code, right? Substitute that into our code, take away the ID, tag name and ID, and hopefully save this, and our tag name and our class name should work. Again, just going to visit the web page, enter, well, identify that text box and enter my name using, again, it's worked. So we're just stepping through this again, right? So we used input and the class name. So we used the tag name, which is input, and then we use class name, right? Our CSS selector class name, right? And we managed to identify the search field, okay, and we managed to enter. Right, so if we click on that, and we can go on down here and do a before and after, right? Before and after. Or you could just unselect it, and while you're hovered over it, you can see the before and after there, right? So the last one to do now is our customized CSS selector for Cypress. I've been waiting all day for that one, right? So this is the one we want to do, right? So your tag name, and then in the square brackets, your attribute equals to value, right? Your attribute equals to value. So if we could take so the attribute here will be here, ID, and then the value be whatever that is, right? So in here, we could, let's say we want to go for class name, right? Let's inspect again. So our attribute we want to use, let's go back for name, right? Let's go back for name, right? So the tag name is input, and inside the square brackets, we go for name equals, if we go back up here, I think we copied name down here somewhere, didn't we? Now let's go back to the query. So the name value is equals this, right? So tag name attribute equals value. And we've used input and we've used attribute as name and we've entered the value. Okay, let's substitute this into our code and see if it works. And if it works, I'm going to leave you here for today. And we've been through our various strategy locator strategies in Cypress, right? And let's just save this and see if it works. This is a customized CSS selector for Cypress. So that's it. Again, it's identified it, right? So if we just talk through the line of the command line code here. So visited the web URL, and then we have used the customized CSS selector. So input, so the tag name, in square brackets the attribute, which we use name, and we enter the value. Okay, and then we managed to also, as we've located the search field, search box, we've entered my name, Kevin Owasu Itoe, right? So if we come out of that and just hover, we can see my name. The search field was empty with just the search text in it, and then after that my name, right? So, or if we double click in it and actually, sorry, pin that down, then we can come down here and go. So the before the search field was just had search text in it, and then the after, my name was well, we identified the search field and then entered my name, right? And that just says 200 for it's all good, right? So we have seen the four main locator strategies for Cypress, right? Using CSS selector, customized CSS selector for the four attributes, right? For the four attributes, and those attributes are ID name, class name, attributes, so any attribute within that HTML for the element, right? And tag name, so using a tag name and a customized CSS selector for the other attributes, right? So my name is Kevin Owasu Itoe. If you found this video useful, consider subscribing and also hitting the bell icon so that you get videos when I release them if you're interested in Cypress or if you're interested in test automation, right? And also don't forget to give a like, a thumbs up, right? And you can also comment, why not? So my name is Kevin Owasu Itoe, and I will say good night for now, okay? Good night.